when you're working as a creative, there is certain sort of pressure that comes along with the job. So there's industry expectations, personal expectations, financial, and today I want to explore how you can navigate this, how to find your own way and how to build a healthy relationship with your art. So hello and welcome to Creativity Uncovered. My name is Abi Gatling and I'm on a journey to uncover how everyday people find inspiration, get inventive and open their imagination. And basically, I want to find how people find creative solutions and then how they use them at home, at work, at play and everything in between. And my goal for this podcast is that by the end of it, you will be armed with a whole suite of tried and tested ways to summon creativity the next time that you need it. So today I'm very excited to be speaking with a musician, Chris Baker. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
The pleasure is all mine. I'm very excited about this chat because I think a lot in this podcast, we focus a lot on kind of the joy of creating because that's such a fun thing to talk about. But I feel like sometimes we don't talk about get a good look at the entire picture because while there's so much fun and joy in creating, there can also be pressure that comes along with it, especially if it is your job. And so, you're a musician, you've done writing, you've done producing, so you know what it's like to be creative and working in the creative industries. So I'd just love to talk to you about that.
Wow, it's huge. It's funny, you just mentioned, when you're an artist, what the people see is almost like the point, the tip of the iceberg, and behind that or underneath that is just like tens of thousands of hours of building your repertoire, your suite of skills and expertise and experience, like years. I saw a post yesterday. It popped up on my feed around all of, there was the greats. There was like Kobe Bryant and a bunch of artists and sports people saying that you see their NBA titles and them holding up the trophies, but you don't see the tens of thousands of hours of, training and missed shots and injuries and heartache that leads to those trophies. So yeah, as a creative, although we're not winning NBA titles, behind the scenes, the studio time and the experimentation and getting things right, more often than not getting things wrong, which leads to getting it right. That's all the stuff that people don't see. And I think it's the stuff that we thrive on, though. As a creative, I love the blank canvas and then coming up with the ideas, generating and organizing and throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks. I don't know, that's the fun stuff for me.
Yeah, that's true. I think, so much of creativity is the journey, I think. But there is I find that when you're creating for creating's sake, just for yourself, it's
Mm.
fine if you don't get it right the first time. You have this no time pressure. But as soon as you start to stray into that world of exchanging your creative output for money, there is
Mm.
this whole nother level of pressure that kind of
Mhm.
can weigh on you. Have you had experiences with that?
Absolutely, absolutely. I've sort of come full circle-ish where I'm at, and particularly one project I'm working on at the moment, which is one of my projects, is purifying almost. Coming back to the reason of creating art, been through the journeys of having the pressures of a fair bit of money involved and time and other people, management and labels and, people with their own schedules to keep and their own investments. And you do have to not so much answer to them, but you feel pressured to get the runs on the board and make things as good as you can, and step away. Like I zoomed out probably around 20. It's probably around COVID-ish times, to be honest, when everything slowed down for everyone, and it was a great. I'm sure anyone listening and watching this understands that it was a time to just review and take a breath and see things from another perspective, because we had the time, I suppose, to do that. And outborn from that was a bit of a hunger to get back to the why we make art. And really, I hope anyone who does make art, whether you're a producer, a music producer, a writer, a visual artist, a dancer, whatever your medium is, I hope if you're listening, you're doing it for firstly you and your own expression, because anything that comes after that really shouldn't be the driver. They're just that's just maybe some sweeteners and cherries on top, or maybe it's things that you've decided to bring in and be part of that experience. I suppose I stripped it back and wanted to explore things more for me as the artist and less for an audience or management or other people. And out of that was born a project that I'm working on at the moment called Big Vacation, and purely named for that reason. It was loosening those shackles and rethinking my relationship with the art was almost like a vacation, a metaphorical holiday from everything that I had been doing. And it was so liberating. And that's really the essence of this project. And that's the I don't know, the mantra, if you will. It's doing it what I'm comfortable with, and in my terms, on my terms. And yeah, so it's actually been really freeing. Mm.
Oh, okay, that's
Yeah.
cool. So, big vacation. If this is feeling like a vacation, what did it feel like prior to that?
Wow, great question. I probably implied that it felt like some sort of, I don't know what's the opposite, like solid work and the grind. And I suppose it was, in a way. Some other projects, they got to some pretty good places, touring, and some good numbers on the board releasing. And I think you can really get lost in that, particularly younger artists, or if you're just not so much starting out, but you're in that getting to the middle part of that career trajectory where you haven't fully experienced everything yet, but you've experienced enough to be quite deep in the game. I suppose that's where I was. And it's not till you zoom out, like I said before, that you realize what you were experiencing and what it was, which is great. It was, it's all great experience, but I think it can get pretty overwhelming, and sometimes you don't notice that or see those signs until you've had a chance to not be doing it. You have to step out of it, sort of see it from the outside looking in. Once you can get that perspective, it allows you to reshape and rethink. And the big one, as I said, I think I've really used this as a bit of an anchor point, is the relationship with the art. What's the artist's relationship with the art that you're creating? And that you mentioned before around money and industry and the commercialization, that's, you've got those two channels that you're putting your energy through. It's the art, creating the art. And if you choose to, if the decision is made that you want to commercialize that, because you don't have to do that, but if you do, then there's a whole other channel of energy that you need to output, because that's the nature of it. If you want to put it out there and release it and do a good job, or if you want to get on the road and tour it, if you want to sell units or whatever it is, it's now business, and you've got to juggle both of those hats.
Yeah,
Um, yeah.
yeah. It kind of feels like if you go down the route of, yeah, commercializing, as you said, when it comes to your art, you kind of get on this treadmill where there's this like kind of planned way to make that happen. You get your manager and you start
Mm,
touring, and then there's all these like commitments, and you're kind of on this path, and it must be hard to kind of get off that in
yeah.
some ways.
Yeah, absolutely. Once the wheels are turning, like I mentioned before, there's other people to consider that are invested, and you sort of feel in that you have to put the effort in, not just for yourself, but for everyone, which is fine. That's all good, particularly if you've got a good team around you, which, generally speaking, I do and did, and that I think, making decisions around who you bring in to your circle is I suppose that's an art in itself. There's so many ways you can build a team and different people. That's that relationship that I'm referring to. Is it healthy? Is it a healthy relationship? And I'm seeing more and more, and I don't know if it's because I've been thinking, like I've opened that way of thinking, or if it's more people are now thinking like that. I'm seeing more people, artists that I know, and artists I don't know, independent artists and artists from the major label world that may have just got out of contracts, and they're singing from that same song sheet around expressing burnout, expressing, for want of a better term, toxic environments, and people expecting things of
Mm.
them that only fit that person's agenda, and they don't really serve the art or the artist. And I'm seeing more and more of those people leaning really independent and leaning into the tools and the skills that independent artists, musicians have at their fingertips in abundance right now. And I think that's, more people are embracing that is the
Yeah.
thing I'm seeing. Yeah.
So when you're saying people having you're seeing this focus on people having a more healthy relationship with their art, I mean, that's a great trend. Is that more around balance, having balance with their art, or connecting with their art, or like what do you mean by that?
So to fully illustrate and maybe check in to sort of build that picture, if anyone wanted to go and check out a couple of people, there's two people that I'll mention. One is a good friend of mine. His name's Hayne Cooper, Hein, Hayne Cooper, and he's an Australian artist. Again, from as a younger artist, he was signed to in that major label lane and was doing great things. Triple J had strong support from them. Did his like a version stuff, and so he was doing great things. And then COVID hit. I think it was COVID again. Sorry, COVID. Yeah, the common link here. And everything sort of, he's lost his label deal, lost his management, blah blah blah, and he was at a bit of a crossroads. I don't want to tell his story. You can go and check it out, because he's now basically what I said. He's fully embraced independent artistdom, and he's just recorded and released his own self-written, produced record. And he's got a really great story and can add depth to sort of the experiences that I'm mentioning with my own. And he's now he's putting out not just his music, but his story, and also resources to enable other artists to do the same thing. There's another artist, his name's Filler, Philla. Go and check him out on Instagram, just like Hayne. He's a hip hop artist. He's Australian, signed again from a major label background, but he actually has some really, really interesting experiences and stories that he's started to share recently on Instagram and other platforms around his major label experiences, and how certain things worked and didn't work. And now again he's fully embracing and advocating for independence, and being an independent artist, and the fact that your relationship with the art is number one. chasing this. I don't want to put, people need to create their own thoughts, but this idea of chasing a dream, quote unquote, getting signed by a label or what, the dream should be you making great art for you, and it makes you, it fills you up, fills your cup. Everything after that, you could almost take it or leave it, because if you're doing it for other people, that's the trap, and that's, I suppose, a lot of the experiences, that when you sign with a label, or sign with management, or you've got other people that you need to consider, it can turn unhealthy. Yeah, do it for you, number one, and then anyone else who is attracted to that, then that should be authentic, but in theory, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah. Is it that, once you get this kind of business side of things involved in that, perhaps signing to a label, that it's harder to remain authentic or connected to your art? Is that what it is?
Yeah, 100%. Almost by design, I suppose the definition of signing, with a label, particularly major labels, is they're going to own the narrative, and they're going to own. It depends on what contract you can negotiate, I suppose, but they're going to dictate the narrative. They're going to dictate the timeline. If you have maximum artistic control, that's great, but you need to have, mate, you need to have your own world in full flight before you can negotiate, that maximum artistic control. And to get your artistry in full flight comes back to creating for you. That's, you build your world, building your, waiting for someone else to come and build your world for you. That's not your art. That's going to be their lens. If you're the artist, you create, and that world building is, that's really what it's about. And now we're bringing into the conversation, I suppose, that social media side of things, and what an audience, if you want to build an audience, what an audience is experiencing. And that comes down to not just your music. Your music is like creating a great song, or an EP, or a record, or whatever. Yes, that's number one. Make good music. Don't worry about anything else. Making music. But there's a whole world to be built around that. There's depth of what you represent. What's your story? What are you saying? But to do that, there's visual elements. There's this standard music videos and so on. But really, particularly now in the contemporary environment, you need to, I suppose, express that healthy relationship with your art through, for want of a better term, content. And that's another, yeah, this is a huge conversation. And that's something else that I've noticed a lot. Pretty much everyone, is struggling to reconcile and figure out, how do I do this? I don't, most artists don't like to get on social media and post things, but here's the rethink of the relationship. If you can make that an extension of what you love doing, what do you love doing? And then speak to that through anything that you put out there on social media. And that's the rethink that I went through, and how, initially, particularly with this new project, I was like, you know what? Maybe don't do social media. That'd be pretty punk. And then quite quickly I thought, no, like, unfortunately, with, like it or not, you sort of don't have to, but you're missing out on a pretty important piece of the puzzle if you don't embrace it.
Yeah.
So,
I think it's an interesting one where it's like now more than ever, you have your own channels that you can control, being all your socials,
mm,
your online presence. Like it's easier than ever to do that. So that's great, I guess, for being able to express yourself. But it's also to be successful at it, sometimes you have to play the game with the algorithms and all those things that go along with social media. you're working on your SEO and you're trying to optimize and you're doing all these things to entice people to like and share and interact, which may not necessarily feel as comfortable or as authentic as if you were just purely doing it as an extension of yourself.
It sounds like I need to get you on board as my social media manager, Abby. Look, I am certainly I'm not a social media fanatic at any point, and nor will I. I'm going to predict, nor will I ever be. But I've found a comfortable place for now, where I'm creating what I want to create and how I want to do it. And this is the next really important thread is the frequency and the time and the energy that you give to that. And again, I'll come back to that anchor point of the healthy relationship. If you look at any social media, blueprint, here's what an artist should do. It's probably breaking those rules because I try and stick to a reasonably frequent way of putting things out there at the right times, but definitely not what the rules would say because I got a life, and I think if you fully commit to creating content every day and posting all these things and potentially then doing things that you don't, it's just not you. It's just there was a list of here's some ideas to use to create social media content, and then you buy into that and then you go off and you start doing that. Deep down you don't like it, maybe not even deep down, maybe all of your being doesn't like it, but someone told you to do it. Again, that is now not your lens. That's someone else's lens that you're trying to tell your story through, and that's never going to work. That's just going to be a distorted thing. And humans are smart, and they know. Anyone looking at a thing, then they can tell that's not that's not them. They're just trying to copy a bunch of other people. So my take, I suppose, on that is do what I love. And, for example, around a similar time, I think in around 2020-ish, I started getting into film photography
Oh, okay.
because I think I'd wanted to for a while. And all of a sudden, I just had a bit of time. I was like, all right, cool. Go and buy a camera and get some film and go and shoot some shots. And that's what I started doing. And started getting a little bit better at that. So now I just and I started creating mood boards just for the project that I was working on. I was just like I want just some aesthetics and just some inspiration visually that I might not even use like put out there, but just for me to visually I don't know build a world around what's hitting when I listen to the music and I look at these images, what's hitting, what's making sense. And that was, I don't know, I found that a really cool project, just part of the project to develop. And again, it was just for me. But now, since then, I've used some of those for cover art and I've actually started just posting some mood boards on my social media that were taken some year, back when I was first starting to do that, because they'd just been sitting there. But now I was just starting to look back. I was like, how's this project is sort of building a thing? And there's a bunch of this that I think would be really great to give people a bit of depth to sort of see where things have come from and then keep adding to those mood boards as I go and creating my own visualizers and movies and learning how to edit and all of that stuff. Just getting across different programs, some Premiere Pro stuff, and it's been great fun. I've been loving it, and it probably takes more time now to do that, but I'm happy to take time. And I think that's another big one. When I said before, frequency of doing things, I think the bigger discussion there is around, and again, for any artist out there, particularly someone starting out and getting, people giving them advice. The constant messaging is, and it was been the constant messaging my whole career since I've started, is keep doing stuff, keep putting stuff out there, keep grinding, keep hustling, keep doing the thing. And once you've done the thing, have another thing. And I understand that, and that is all good. And to be honest, if you could keep doing that for years and years and years without your heart and mind just either imploding or exploding, yeah, it'd be great. It'd be awesome. But it's not sustainable for most people. I would argue for all people. And it's not a healthy approach. And it's definitely the more impressionable people either entering the game, or maybe it's just the nature of those individuals that they will listen to advice and think, oh, that's I have to do that and really take it on board. No, you don't have to do that. What you do have to do is be you and be healthy and be happy, and draw boundaries and value you and your time and your energy and who you are. And some, yeah, I suppose there's the art of listening to advice and knowing which advice or which parts of advice to take on board and which parts to filter out. And that takes experience as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So kind of like your perspective is that to be happy and sustainable in your art and to maintain that sort of balance is to be guided by what's truly authentic to you. But I can imagine though that a lot of people don't necessarily create with intention. You just start doing things because it's good and it's fun, and then that's where you can kind of go off track. So how do you actually? And I know you've done this with your big vacation projects. You've started doing that like introspective, looking at yourself and trying to figure out like what is authentic to you and recenter it that way. But
Mm-hmm.
what does that look like? How can people who are listening now and going, actually, I don't really know what I stand for as an artist. I don't really know what inspires
Wow.
me as an artist. Like, how do they actually do that? What were the steps that you took?
It's a great question. Unfortunately, time is a big one in experience. I don't think there's, again, giving a blueprint, giving a step-by-step guide. That's then someone doing it through my lens. You have to find your own lens or your own understanding of of finding your voice as an artist. I think that's one of, if you were to ask, I don't know, most artists, what's the advice? What's the first piece of advice that anyone ever gave you? Almost guarantee in the top five things that people mention is someone saying to them, find your voice. And it's actually a really confusing, like the wording of that. I remember when I first heard that, I found it like I could understand what they were saying, but I remember walking away going, yeah, but what does that mean? Like, find my voice? Like my singing voice? Or I don't know. I sort of got it, but I didn't quite fully understand. And I think it's, well, from my understanding, from what I've built up as my understanding, what I've been mentioning in this discussion is it's bigger than the song. It's bigger than the art. Your voice is not just your music. It's not just your project. It's not just the content. It's not just that music video or that press shot or that. It's bigger than that. It's what do you do outside of that as well? Who are your friends? How do you value family and relationships? How do you build those and nurture them? What do you give to others? What do you give to yourself? What other professions, what other professional pursuits do you have in your whole wheelhouse outside of music? I don't know, what do you study? What do you love? What do you not love? How do you move your body? There's all of those things.
A lot of self-questioning then.
Well, I think that's your voice, how you live your life really is your voice. And then when it comes to your art, when you zoom in, and then your voice is then going through that lens of who you are as an artist. And that might change over time as well as people grow and have experiences and figure things out. And I think the essence of someone's going to stay the same, but how they express that voice might mature or change or shift. Yeah. So to answer your question, how do you do that? Life experience is pretty big, but also it's like giving a non-example. If you're trying to explain something, sometimes saying, well, here's what it isn't, and here's what it is. Because a lot of people think finding my voice as an artist is purely just about the art.
Mm,
It's just the music, and it's the thing it's the art stuff that I do. That's what someone tried to tell me. That's my voice as an artist. But I think start with not that. Start with everything else. Who are you? Who are you as a human? And then that will then point to the art and who you are as an artist.
mm. Yeah, I have a friend who's kind of going through I don't know, don't know what you technically call it, midlife crisis, what most people would say.
Mm,
And
yeah.
their their psychologist has been doing so much work around values and kind of identifying what are your core values. You know, you mentioned family, you mentioned this and that. And the interesting thing that has come out of that is that, you know, that is hard work to question yourself and to really kind of nail that down. But once you do that, it's so much easier to make decisions about where you go
Mm,
to next because you've got this kind of compass. Oh, this lens that you said that you're running everything through, every decision that you're making around your art, your career, your life, these decisions, does it align with this value that I said is core to
mm.
me, or does it not? And if it's not, then it's very easy to make the decision to not go ahead with that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I suppose when someone says a voice as an artist, what's your artistic voice? It's almost like what your friend's psychologist said. Who, what do you value? Who are you as a human? And that's what art is about. Like making art isn't easy. Well, making good art or art that's genuine, it's not easy. If it was easy, what's the same? Everyone would be doing it. Um, and that's the art. Therein lies the art, is making big ideas understood by people in a palatable, is an easy way to digest. That's what the essence of art is, right? You think about creative, like figurative language, creative language, like metaphors, similes, those sorts of things. That's what they are. They are comparisons to distill a complex idea in a really easy way for someone to understand. And that's what art should be. Okay, a 3 minute 20 contemporary song. That's 3 minutes 20. And that can bring in some of the biggest ideas that we've had going through our hearts and minds. And you put it in 3 minutes, 20 seconds. If it's done well, that's pretty beautiful stuff, really. Hmm.
Hmm. Yes. Well, I mean, I think that's really interesting that yeah, like the more kind of work you can do on yourself can help you become a better artist in the fact that you're being more true to yourself and setting yourself up for success in that you won't burn out, or not as likely to
Mm,
burn out. You're going to be more happy with what you produce. You're going to be happier in the process as part of the creative process. I think that's really lovely.
absolutely. And then the decisions you were mentioning, decisions that you make that align with your voice or who you are or your values. If you choose to go down the commercial path with your art or with your music, you've got decisions to make about money and your time and workflow. And I think once you're clear on who you are and the voice of you as an artist, once you start getting to those pointy decisions around, investing money or getting people on board or starting to get serious about putting things out there, it can really help you make wise decisions that will work for you and the art, because that's when the burnout happens. Once you start making decisions that don't serve you or the art, your energy and your headspace and your heart space gets taken up with things that really quickly sap and drain your energy in a very, very short period of time, because because you don't want to be doing those things.
Mm.
Yeah, like that example around social media content, doing making stuff that you don't want to make because someone else told you to make it, or you see everyone else doing it, so you think, oh, that's the thing, is it? All right, that burns you out real quick, and that's just one example. There's many decisions that you can make once you start going down those paths. Yeah, that's the unhealthy relationship that could potentially start to form. I suppose courageous enough to say no. I'm not going to do that tour because I've seen the figures. I've seen what they've offered to pay. The juice isn't worth the squeeze. That I'm drawing my boundaries, and that's the healthy relationship. To draw your boundaries, it's completely fine to say no. No, I'm not going to make those sorts of TikToks that I've seen everyone start to do recently, or whatever. Just say no, and find your own way of doing it. Find those shows that you do want to do. Find those artists you do want to play with. Create that content that is an extension of you, and because then that does not only does it not burn you out, it actually spurs you on. It drives you. It fills you up because you love doing it. That's the stuff you love doing. But also the time you give. That's the big one. Value your time. Do the other stuff. Go and finish your degree, do that, do your studies, go and work in that other place. This is another discussion, and I know we're going to run out of time soon. I could talk for hours on this stuff. That's another conversation. Is there's that question around independent artists and jobs, and what do I do? Yeah, I might need a part-time job to pay bills, pay rent, whatever, pay board if you're still living at home, or I don't know, put food on the table. And then there's the artists who just want to go all in and be the artist, and they want to live that life, and again have that dream, and all of those options are there. You make the decisions that you want to make. However, what I've noticed and what I've seen in my experience is having jobs, and whether it's a part-time job or whether it's something more serious or even other professions, is a really healthy thing, and I would strongly recommend it and advocate for that. If you have those jobs, if you work outside of your art, your art will be better. You will make better art if you have a life outside of it. Writing, like, live a life, and then you have a full heart and mind and experiences. You can understand the world because that's what your art is about, and that's what people connect with. That's the world we live in.
Yeah, yeah. I guess also that's it. Like you're getting all these wider amount of experiences, which means more inspiration
Mm.
and yeah, a variety of things to talk about. But Chris, I feel like I'll have to close us off there. I feel like we could
Mm.
keep talking about this forever. But thank you for coming on and sharing your experience with me. And I think it's really interesting how, COVID was a terrible event, but for so many people who've come on the podcast, it really was a catalyst for
Mm.
the next step of their creativity. So it's great to hear your experience with that as well.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been awesome.
Yeah. And thank you to everyone who's tuned into Creativity Uncovered today. If you enjoyed this episode, yeah, please, yeah, let us know. Give us a like or share it with a friend who may be interested as well. Until next time, take care. If you've made it this far, a huge thank you for your support and tuning into today's episode. Creativity Uncovered has been lovingly recorded on the land of the Cubby Cubby people, and we pay our respect to elders past, present, and emerging. This podcast has been produced by my amazing team here at Crisp Communications, and the music you just heard was composed by James Gatling. If you liked this episode, please do share it around and help us on our mission to unlock more creativity in this world. You can also hit subscribe so you don't miss out on any new episode releases.